Reiss Nelson puts forward a League Cup performance that has Mikel Arteta asking, can I get a do-over for the derby? This is the ArsenalVision post-match podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter. Yankee Gunner. I mean, I'm sure he's not thinking that, but maybe he's thinking that. Reiss Nelson putting together a pretty good performance off the left against Brentford in the League Cup. And, you know, one of those performances that has you going, that might have been handy in the derby. But you know what? The derby is old news. What's new news is Arsenal winning the League Cup now that Manchester City are out of it. And we are by far the best team left in the competition. And basically, it's ours. The question of whether anyone cares if it's ours is something that we will address in this podcast. And it's interesting, right? Because I have to speak my truth. And nobody likes it, but I still do it. And that's just the history of the world. I just struggle to care about the League Cup. But once the game kicks off, I care about the game more than I care about anything in my life. And it is the duality of being a fan and why no one would want to be a manager is that you got people basically putting up joke starting 11s before the game that include players from like 2008. People have like Frimpong in the lineup and, you know, guys like that. But then when the game kicks off and we lose possession once, people are like, oh, for fuck's sake, oh, come on. So yeah, once the game kicks off, it's hard to tell yourself you don't care. You do care because you just do. That's why you're an Arsenal fan. That's why you're here. And we all care. Figuring out how to prioritize it is difficult. And I think Mikel got it spot on in this game. And we'll talk about that and talk about where this fits into our plan for the season and how we got to look at some players who may come in handy given our injury crisis and given the amount of games that we have coming up. Tomorrow, we are going to do something really fun on the Patreon side, a new concept. Clive and I will kick it off, but basically, it's 3 big questions. You know, I think one of the things that happens in the middle of the season is we're so game to game to game to game that we aren't able to do much on the pod where we stop and explore some of the big questions or big topics hanging over the club or over the season at the moment. And so I've crowdsourced some of those. I've got 3 picked out, and we'll dive into 3 topics that are really sort of the burning questions. We've got a transfer-related one, we've got a player performance-related one, and we've got one about the attack. I'm excited to get into that, and I hope you will enjoy it. But for today, what I know you will enjoy is hearing from Paul, who's on Twitter at Pause My Pants. Hello, Pause.
Woohoo!
And Clive, you can find him on Twitter at ClivePAFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
I do want to say that I'm excited. Tomorrow, I've got my first meeting to do advanced planning for our fundraiser in April. Yeah, that's right. It's not till April, but we start, you know, we talk once over the summer and then we get to work in the fall and we put a lot of work into getting that ready. So I'll be excited for that because it's one of my favorite things that we do. Just, you know, love being a part of a community where we can do so many special things together. And one of the special things we could do, if you want, we are now a finalist for the Football Content Awards. If you want to go to their link and vote, it's Best Podcast Premier League. We are called the ArsenalVision Podcast, for those of you that are unaware. And I will put the link to that in the show notes if you want to go vote. They've now gone to a 50% fan vote, 50% judges vote. I believe that is because a couple seasons ago when we won it, you all basically broke the internet. And they were like, well, we can't have Arsenal winning everything all the time because, like, I think we won and our Arsenal, like, YouTube content creators won and Arsenal new content creators won. And it was a podium sweep for Arsenal. So they had to tamp down on that, but we would love to, we'd love to have you vote if you'd like to give it to us. So let's start with this, Clive, very simply. A fun lineup, I think, a lineup that harkened back to some of the days of Arsene Wenger's treatment of the League Cup, where you got to see some players you'd like to see. Now, back then it was academy players. Here we had one academy player, Charles Sago Jr., who got to play. Really exciting for him. But this was more about some of the players we've been wanting to see get some time, get some minutes. Players like Emile Smith Rowe, obviously. Reiss Nelson got the start off the left, which was a big talking point for the weekend's game. We got to see Aaron Ramsdale come back in and wind up the Brentford fans. I loved this lineup because I think it's a lineup that has every capability to compete and win a game, but also a lineup that doesn't put at risk players that are going to be critical to the upcoming League and Champions League games, given the injury situation we have. So what do you make of it? And who are you particularly excited to see?
Yeah, I think the lineup, maybe some of the debates were taken away by injury, literally, you know, as Arteta was keen to say, we had 7 people out, right? So now you got to look at the rest of the squad. So you're not able to go a complete full 11, different 11, sorry. So now you need to sort of do some mixing and matching. And I really liked what he did. And to be honest, I'm with you, Elliot. I'm not too fond of this competition. However, I walk into it saying it's a learning opportunity. So you get to see people in different positions. You get to see them moving positions. And then you find out what depth you have. And I always feel stronger for these games if you get 4 or 5 good performances or 4 or 5 performances heading in the right direction. And that's how I feel today. And I sort of tweeted out and said, I really enjoyed that. And someone said, but we were battered in the second half. But it wasn't about the optimum performance. It was about what you can find out away from home. Were you playing as a team? Do you see different people like Tomi who play 2 positions? You're seeing Smith Rowe have a switch sides for a period of time. You see Jesus come in a different position. You're seeing Ben White go from inside. Sorry, Tomiyasu go from inside centre half to right back. You see Kiwior coming to right centre half and left back. And so you're finding stuff out, right? You're learning at the Premier League level against a Brentford team that made 2 changes. And during the second half, brought on one of their best players to basically have a Premier League side. And I thought we weren't perfect, but we dug in and I really enjoyed seeing the progression and the return of a number of players with the context of saying this is Brentford, this isn't Spurs, this isn't like Manchester United or Man City, but this is Brentford. And some people show up against Brentford rather than doing it in the other games. But it's still a real positive step forward for me because with the injured players due to come back quite quickly and the players we found in this group, I feel like we're stronger Arsenal this morning. Does that make sense?
I think it makes a lot of sense. Paul, there's one player in particular that I think everybody really wants to see playing more, and that's Emile Smith Rowe. And he played in the Odegaard role, so to speak. And Mikel had some comments after basically saying he is better in those half spaces. He is better in the interior and he can speed things up there. That, he's better there than as a true wide player. So I think we have clear evidence now that Smith Rowe's path into teams is going to be in one of the 8s. And, I think right off the bat, you see a player who has real quality to speed up the tempo of a game, whose directness and running in the final third in particular can be hurtful. He nearly got his goal. I actually think it's probably a heavy touch to get around that second defender, but then, the shot's well saved. Is Smith Rowe the player? I mean, look, Sago Jr. is really fun because he's an academy player, and it's always great to get a look at an academy player, but I don't want to overhype or over-examine that because I think this was a chance to give him minutes, not necessarily look at a player who's going to be playing a lot for us this season. But Smith Rowe is one who I think Mikel would like to be able to use more. So was he the one that you think this was most important for of everyone?
Yeah, we had a big debate on the instant reaction about like we do our stocks rising and falling, and we on this one, because there were so many players asked to do something different or given a shot in a new position or just getting on the pitch. We kind of went through who is this game potentially more meaningful before you even watch the performances. And so this probably Smith Rowe was the guy this could be most influential for. So while I agree, I'd say he played in the Odegaard position rather than the Odegaard role. I'm sure you probably agree with that, right? We don't rely on Smith Rowe to do for us what Odegaard would do, like different skill sets standing in the same area of the pitch. Maybe you're looking for similar results in terms of creation and scoring goals now that Odegaard has pulled on his shooting boots. And I think Smith Rowe had a mixed game. I think he was very vanilla Smith Rowe for a lot of the game, but in a couple of bursts, he showed the Smith Rowe we fell in love with when he came into the team. And the movement you're talking about, I think he connects with Jorginho, who puts him into the box, but it's actually Smith Rowe who kicks it off like he used to. Back a season or two ago, he'd kind of do a give and go run, pick it up, knock it off to somebody else. And the thing about him is he's mostly about movement and traveling. And that's not something I think our positional play loves. We really want the ball to move, the guy to play in a particular zone. I mean, it's not against the rules, but I just wonder if the style of play when you see him doing that much movement, of course you love it when it comes off, you love it when it works, but it's not like our A concept to have players in a particular area and to move the ball. Smith Rowe is who moves. He kind of gives the ball, runs on ahead of it. It's a little bit Aaron Ramsey, it's a little bit, but it's kind of almost the other style. And I wonder if maybe ultimately he suffers from that. He's not quite positional play in terms of how he does his damage. But yeah, he had a couple of moments in this game where I thought, oh yeah, there it is. And he had his minutes, and he was kept on. I don't know what he was kept on for, maybe 80 minutes. He had a good run there. I think he definitely showed a couple of moments. It would have been beautiful if he buried that chance. He kind of did everything. I agree with you. I don't know if the touch was a little heavy or the defending was a little dodgy for the last guy he beats to round and have a go at the keeper. It did feel a little bit Carabao Cupish just at the end. But had he buried that, he'd feel a whole world better. But it's great. He got 80 minutes. He's become... He'll feel he's becoming more like you got to be able to contribute in games. I think that was the beautiful thing for Nelson in this game, who I'm sure we're going to talk about plenty. But he really got it. He got his claws into this. Smith Rowe began to get his claws into it. He needs more than this, though. Like, that's why you want to stay in this competition. You've ulterior motives in the early days to stay in the competition. I started to care about this game about the same time both teams really started to care about this game, which was maybe in the 70th minute. A football match broke out in the football match. And that's how this competition is. Until you see both teams really giving a crap, that's when you start to get fired up. And when you see the players really getting into it.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, like... Brentford put out a pretty strong team. So, I think
it was very interesting. They put out a very strong team, but didn't do anything with it for 60, 70 minutes, I think.
Well, and it's hard to say. I mean, there's a part of me that thinks they struggled to handle our football in the first half, but because we played so many players who aren't used to playing, that when they upped the tempo a bit and when our players started to flag a bit from just not being used to going 90 minutes, because you look at that team, has anybody in that team gone 90 minutes yet this season? Other than Ramsdale? Like, I'm not sure anybody, probably in Kedia.
But, Kai, maybe.
Yeah, Kai. Has he played 90 minutes? Anyway, point is, I just think, Gabriel, good call. Clive, although he also had plenty of games he didn't play at all, weirdly. That's another story. So, point is, I think it's hard to know if our levels dropped because of just physical power leaving our game or if their levels went up. That, I guess it depends whether you want to be more Arsenal-centric or Brentford-centric in your analysis. But Clive, just before we move off Smith Rowe, he's an interesting one because his quality is so easy to see. Mikel talks about Smith Rowe in a different way than I feel like he talks about any other player. Every single thing he says about Smith Rowe has a message of challenging him, I feel. And if you read his post-match comments, and I'm not going to read all of them out, but there's one, physically, he's still not there to play 90 minutes, right? He's developing his qualities. We need, and then he was struggling more later in the second half as a comment he makes. He did pick up a knock, but it wasn't because of that. We had to manage his minutes. He's got different qualities to other attacking midfielders. He's great to have. We need him at his best. It's a really interesting one with Smith Rowe because everything Mikel says about him and this way that he manages him seems quite different. And when you see how good he can look, in the first half in particular, and then you hear how Mikel talks about him, do you get the sense that Mikel is looking for Smith Rowe to do something, maybe in training or maybe with his lifestyle or maybe something, so that Mikel can use him more because he sees his qualities, but there's that challenging aspect to the comments he makes about him, I feel like, every time he plays.
Yeah, when you say challenging, the first thought in my mind is, that I don't know why, you haven't said it, but it's just my thought is, you're challenging someone in a slightly aggressive way to get more out of him. Well, I think
pushing him. Yeah.
He's highlighting where the problem is. And it's a very sensitive topic, this, because I'm making intelligent guesses, and but the problem for me isn't talent. The problem for me is maybe maturity, emotional maturity, mental maturity for this environment. And I think he's trying to encourage him to see himself. encourage him to believe in himself. For those keen watchers who are just watching properly the game, Smith Rowe has been setting that ball off conservatively for quite a long time. And he has been very keen almost not to make mistakes. And that's how he plays. He's quite secure. And then he does one big thing, turn around, bang, go. And you think, crikey. And that leaves a memory on you. You know, it leaves a memory with you. I just think he's a developing player. And we've got a few in this attacking midfield. Let's say at the start of the season, and we've got Vieira's another one that's a developing player for us. You know, and we haven't bought big in this attacking midfield area. I know Kai Havertz has come in, but Kai Havertz is the second midfielder on this day. He's the one in between Smith Rowe and Jorginho. And so we want him to get higher. We want him to crash the box a bit more. But at this moment in time, he's playing slightly deeper, particularly when Declan Rice is on the pitch. So Smith Rowe is the third midfielder, the one that's been the attacking midfielder. And for that player, needs to be a risk taker, needs to travel past people, take people on, or create chances for others. And I think he's just developing into that role and that responsibility and the accountability that comes with that role, playing for Arsenal Football Club with number 10 shirt on your back. I honestly believe there's an interview just out there, just been released noon today, UK time. Just watch that interview. Just watch it with your own eyes. I'm not going to surmise. You people can make their own opinion. He's a young man. He's a young man that's still developing emotionally. And we just got to give him time to re-find himself. Let's not assume the manager has a problem with him. If a player is a good player that can help the manager win matches, trust me, he'll be on that pitch. He'll never come off that pitch. Right? If the manager, we have to trust him. Say, if the manager feels that physically he may not be quite ready, we have to trust that. Towards the end of that game, if you're watching, you could see that he needs more time. He needs more minutes. You know, Reece Nelson came off. I thought he had more in the tank. But it's about rotation, right? So there you go. There's your simile right there between the two of them. He just needs a bit more time to reach his level. And I, like many, are prepared to be patient with these players because not everybody zooms up to the top of the tree at the same pace, emotionally and physically, able to cope with these top-level games week after week after week. Smith Rowe is still to be proven around that. And I know people got great memories of him doing good things. That was a long time ago, and we just got to give him time to get back to where he once was.
Yeah, well said, Clive. Look, we could do a whole Emile Smith Rowe pod because he's a player that there's so much focus on, because he is an academy player, because he shares a song with Bukayo Saka, and they were meant to be the two that come through together, right? To me, there has to be a way to use this player because when he's on the pitch and you see what he adds, you can't miss it. It's something we need. It's a tempo quickening quality. It's a directness in his game, but I don't think Mikel wants to rely on players who maybe don't switch on when we don't have the ball or, can't play for 90 minutes or at least 80 minutes at a time. And if you're a manager and you don't know what you're going to get from a player, even if you know they have something special in them, you're going to default to someone that you know what they're going to get. And I think until his off-the-ball energy and effort matches his on-the-ball dynamism, we're not going to see as much as Smith Rowe as we might like. Look, to me, Paul, because I am a miserable bastard, and I think everybody who knows me knows that, I could not watch the Nelson performance without viewing it in the context of the derby. I think there were a lot of people that felt it should have been Jesus through the middle and Nelson off the left. So how am I supposed to wrap my brain around the enigma that is Nelson scoring the goal in this game, but it's provided by great work from Eddie Nketiah? Right? I mean, Eddie counterpresses, wins the ball, gets it to Nelson, and Nelson finishes, oh, by the way, from the spot, almost to the exact point where Jesus didn't. Granted, quite a different kind of dynamic for the shot that he was taking, but the Nelson performance is good, and I think given what's going on with Martinelli and Trossard, the way Mikel chose to solve it on Sunday was Nketiah through the middle and Jesus off the left. I think this Nelson performance will certainly give him another view of how he can solve it if he needs to do so against Bournemouth on Saturday. So for you, is the Nelson performance maybe the most significant in the sense of a player who might immediately benefit from that good performance as early as this weekend?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly, I came from there was a player played. You might say in his position or very much one of his positions, having a game that showed all that he's good at. He looked the most on it. It looked like Arteta ball. Like we discussed this in the instant reaction. You could have a great game. Like I play 5-a-side, or used to, during the week and beat like 10 guys and score like 7 goals. Like if the manager of the team is watching it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How much melatonin did you have to take to have that dream? Or did you just have it naturally?
No, this is genuinely a thing that used to happen with me.
Okay.
I'd just light it up in like a crappy game. But unfortunately, back at the weekend where there's 11 players on each side and the pitch is big and there's mud and you're back to trudging around, back to your mediocrity, and suddenly you're back to not being able to beat everybody on the pitch, score goals at will, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, so you could have a great game in the Carabao Cup and it not be meaningful to the manager because he's like, yeah, sorry, that just doesn't translate to, there's no flat track bullying going on at the weekend. You got to roll, you got to, and like Nelson in this game lit it up in an Arteta ball kind of way. He was doing the kinds of things Arteta would want him to do in a full-on Premier League game. Like it just translates what I saw here. I thought he looked really, really good. And like basically every time he plays for it, if it's a couple of minutes, if it's 20 minutes, he's been performing. I think if you're Arteta, you got to love what Nelson's doing for you. And like you, I really wish Nelson had been left wing against Spurs and Jesus had been central as striker, specifically for that game, because what was the Spuds game? The Spuds game was played around the back as much as you can till you got your chance to break out of it. And we played a very aggressive press against the Spuds for 30, 35 minutes, which was pretty good. But it would have been better if it had been Jesus central and if Nelson could have taken that left wing berth. And if we'd had Kai Havertz as the left 8, that would have been a very, very aggressive pressing team.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have run out of pressing at 30 minutes. I mean, we've seen Jesus. If he's on the pitch for 70 or 80 minutes, you got 70 or 80 minutes pressing. Nelson's got the legs. Havertz will press all game long. That was the big miss for me because I've had people say, well, because I criticized the way we didn't get at them and that they started to play through us as the game went on. And people were saying, well, we pressed very well for 30, 35 minutes. Well, what
game's 90 minutes long.
Yeah. So. And guess what? As soon as we started running, and like, I think Eddie did good, but he's not a brilliant presser. Jesus is a world-class presser. I think Nelson can hold up his end on the left. Havertz is one of the best presser turn. Like, I just think that lineup was wrong, given what this battle was always going to be, how they want to play it around the back and how we want to aggressively press out of possession. That's how we played that game. And we kind of, the intensity dropped and they came up and they had more possession at home at the Emirates than us. So I think it was a big miss. And I think it was interesting in this game. He brought on Jesus later on and kept Eddie central and switched Nelson to the right. Like I have a sense we might still see Jesus off the left and Eddie central.
Can I ask
you the weekend? Yeah.
Because again, I'm inclined to see the world the way I want it to be. I almost thought that might be, let me just keep Nelson a bit fresh, because if Martinelli and Trossard are not available at the weekend, that's
we kept him on for a while.
Yeah, but I mean,
he didn't take him off at that point.
No, that's a good point. Well, look, the interesting thing about Nelson, Clive, you tell me. I'm actually trying to think. Nelson hasn't played a lot. We re-signed him, so obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, because when we re-signed Eddie, it was actually quite a while before Eddie got any minutes, but we did re-sign him. So, there's some thought there that might be asset protection, but I think it's largely because we want him. I'm I can't think of a time Nelson's come on and not impressed me. You know, and the problem is, right, when you're coming on at level or down a goal in the 85th minute and it's all out attack and you're just telling him go attack, right? You don't need a lot of subtlety or complexity or sophistication to your game. And Nelson's come into a lot of desperate situations late and shown a little burst, and that jumps out at you. But this was not that. One of the best things Nelson did in this game, beside his goal, I don't feel like people really focused on this. He had an amazing recovery tackle where he ran back into the box off that their right flank to defend a position that had been vacated by Kiwior, and just showed an unbelievable burst to get there. I can't think of many times Nelson's come on and not impressed me, Clive, and he seems to be doing it at both ends. So do you think there's enough here to maybe elevate his stature in the pecking order, something like that? Because there must be a reason he wasn't picked at the weekend, and I think he came out with a hunger that was pretty clear to see in this game.
Yeah, there's a player in here, and I don't think he's unlocked yet. Paul was touching on the right thing there. We're talking about his five-a-side versus the weekend games. I've watched Reiss Nelson for literally 6 years now, and I don't know when he's going to play well. Every time he seduces me to think he's going to play well, he goes quiet. When I think he shouldn't play well, he comes on and rips it. You know, and I just can't predict it. You know, at the weekend, he came on against Spurs. He was okay. You know, he was okay. A team that was flagging, I didn't think he was aggressive enough. He was okay. Yesterday, it's like someone told him, you need to be more aggressive. And he was really aggressive on this game. You know, and I just want to see him be consistently that player. I think he's a real two-way player. I think he'd really bought into the team. I thought he took responsibility like he was the senior Hale-End person on the pitch. He was coming inside, and there were two people around him with good shirt numbers, and he was the one saying, "Nah, I'll take the ball, lads." And he literally did really well for me with responsibility and accountability there. I really liked what he did. I just wanted him to get the manager's trust so he can do that. The manager trusts him doing the Big Six game from the start. That's the next step for his career, because he can absolutely save the legs of Martinelli, of Saka, of Trossard. He can definitely be a part of this group. But when the moment came to pick him, he didn't pick him. Now, it could have been for a specific game plan, the pressing plan, which faded away when Eddie faded away, really, to be honest. But I was really impressed how he took leadership role last night. You think about our front four kids out of the academy, and we've gone to a Premier League away team with only one or two changes, and we've got the win. I know it's more defensive win, but they played their role in it, and I'm really impressed with that, and he was right there. But I think Paul's touching on the right thing. You don't want to be a flat track bully. You need to do it in the big moments and consistently do it in the big moments. And there is not a big track record of that yet for Reiss Nelson. And people say he has an opportunity. Yep, absolutely. But that's his job now, to convince the manager that next time when you got two injuries on left wing and you're playing a Big Six team, the only place I can look is to go to Reiss Nelson. That's the next job for him. And it's not really for us. It's for him to convince the management. So that only comes by being really, really consistent in your play.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens with Nelson. I think I think there's a player in there. I agree. It's like we do this with some of our academy players, right? We spend years and years and years saying we think there's a player in there, and then they go to some club that we think is beneath them, and then they don't make it there. And you're like, oh, well, I guess there wasn't. I don't know. I think with Nelson, there is something there, but how we use him and whether we use him is going to be important to see. I mean, look, Bournemouth away, if we were in rip-roaring form, there's a part of me that would say, don't be too risky. It's City the next weekend. Don't play Saka. Play Nelson. You know, like just be a little careful, or don't push Martinelli or Trossard if they've got soft tissue injuries. Play Vieira off the right and play Nelson off the left and go with Jesus through the middle and, mix it up a little bit. But the lack of click, I think, would have everybody really nervous about that. And I realize the Premier League, you can't look past any game. But it's hard not to see the City game on the horizon.
What you say there, Elliot, is in principle is wonderful. But I've also sat on this podcast with you after a 2-2 home draw versus Fulham, where the world had ended. And so you may be patient, sir, but there are many thousands who are not.
Well, right. And this is the thing, right? I mean, ultimately, I don't think we can afford to be patient. Well, you have to afford to be patient. But I think that the struggle with trying to be patient is, does anybody have complete confidence in the way we're attacking football right now, or our football overall? The results haven't been terrible, not by a long shot. I mean, we won in the Champions League, we won in the League Cup, we haven't lost a game yet this season. We won the Community Shield. I mean, basically, we're just ticking along, but we don't look quite right. And I think the comfort level we'd have if we got a little weird with our Bournemouth lineup would be lower than it would had we gotten off to more of a rip-roaring start. It's just that it is impossible for me to look at the Bournemouth game without having the City game in mind. And by the way, you know what that makes it? Does anybody know what that makes it? The fact that I can't look at the
game.
It's a trap game. It is the quintessential trap game. That's right. A bigger game.
I can spot them now as long as you do that before the point where we have to decide if it's a trap game. If you do that thing, I'll know it's a trap game.
So, Paul,
can I say something on that? Because I think it's a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, please. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like the left wing and the right wing are very different. Apart from the fact they're on opposite sides of the pitch. There's another thing in which they're different. One is Saka, and that seems to be how we build our attack, how we control. That's the control wing. And the left wing is the one where I think we have some options. Like if you're the manager, you're just going to be addicted like crack cocaine or something. I don't know. I'm not very good at this whole drugs. whatever the young people are addicted to these days. Like you're going to play Saka every game, which I know upsets people, but there's nobody else who can stand on that side of the pitch and do stuff that allows us to not draw 2-2 at Fulham and to play our football. Like there's Saka and nobody else. Even if we had a good player who plays on that side, it would totally change the balance, the tempo, how we build, how we control, all the stuff we do. The left-hand side, that's more of a kind of, it's almost a transition, a counter-attacky. We hit with speed. Like there's less build, less control. So you have your options there, and we actually have more options there. We can play. We've shown we'll play Jesus. We can play Trossard when he's fit. We can play Martinelli. We'd play Reece Nelson. We'd play Smith Rowe. We probably won't going forward, but we have in the past. That's the side which is more about. It's more about performance and skill and a little more individuality. And we just don't have. So, like at the weekend and with City coming up, we're going to play Saka. We're always going to play Saka.
I mean, assuming he can play. Assuming he can play.
Yeah. And so it's interesting to hear you guys debating the philosophy of it. And if you like, there's a part of both. You can, unfortunately, it's probably the right side we need to do the most resting, but it's the most intrinsic to how we play. And the left side is the one we could do the most rotation and change, but in general. And we have the most options, and it's the most suited to it. And we're the most willing to do it. And like you have both sides of both how we feel about how we should change and also how the styles of our play and the kinds of players we can interchange. The right is just like it's going to be 57 games for Saka this year.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because in the perfect world, we'd be playing absolutely tip-top football, the best we've ever played. We could look at the Bournemouth game as a chance to just be a little careful ahead of the City game and of course, Champions League midweek. But now I think it's almost more important you go into the Bournemouth game to try to tease out a really good performance so that you go into the City game feeling like you really know where your football's at. But we'll see what it comes down to. Clive, I'm going to say something controversial that people will disagree with and hate and then expect you to correct. But I am convinced I am correct. I think if I got a couple of glasses of red wine into Mikel Arteta, he would tell me that he was very disappointed in Ramsdale's performance at Brentford. Now, Aaron Ramsdale made some fantastic saves. Aaron Ramsdale was joking it up with the crowd. Aaron Ramsdale, from social media, at least as far as I can tell, his performance was lauded as one of the top from this game. Aaron Ramsdale was fun to watch. He was diving around his box. He was doing everything he needed to do to keep him out. He kept this game a win for us. He did the goalkeeper stuff well. And yet, I'm going to tell you that I think Mikel Arteta was disappointed with the performance. And the reason I say this, Mikel made a comment at the end that stood out to me. So first of all, he was very complimentary of Ramsdale. You know, he said something that I loved, right? When people were like, oh, you know, do you rate him? Or, you know, people were asking about the Raya thing. And he's like, do I rate him? I'm the one who brought him in when nobody was convinced by that move. We love him for sure. We have him every day. We know him. We know his character. We know what he brings to the team. We are really happy to have him. But this is something he said about the performance. And in the second half, they had a more aggressive approach as well. And we struggled to progress the ball and travel together. Here's the key. We were too direct, and then it becomes a difficult game. Aaron Ramsdale kicked long 29 times in this game, completing 9 of them. I went and looked at his second half. 1 of his 16 passes in the second half went short. The other 15 went long. Mikel said, in the second half, we were too direct. And this is something we've been consistently focused on. So, Clive, this is the thing for me. I watched Ramsdale, loved the performance, felt great for him, came away, read that quote, looked at the data, and it makes me wonder, is that really the thing? Is that the thing? How do you feel about this Ramsdale situation? Because to me, watching it live, it was a typical great Ramsdale performance. Then when I read that quote and looked into the data, I'm like, maybe there's something here that just gets under Mikel's skin. That's the bee in his bonnet, you know?
Well, that's where you are with Ramsdale. So you've been consistent about his long play. I personally think we targeted people long play second balls to go over them, and also you're playing with a basically a 2 of your back 4 that are not there, and your main ball player just been taken away, who comes to get it. The other ball player, which is Declan Rice, coming deep to get it. So I don't think the short options were available. And there is a pressure of the game. The pressure of the game, sometimes people come on to you, so you want to get away, you want to try to win the ball. And we're throwing the ball forward to 4 Highlanders and Kai Havertz, right? So I watched the game this morning and I saw some of what you'd call not completed passes, where we put them under pressure and the ball still dropped to us on the second ball. You know, and they've won the duel, but then we've got the next ball, or it's gone out for a throw-in. So I watched the game because I just knew this was coming. I thought, let me watch this game, right? So and basically that's where people are. I thought Ramsdale had a fantastic performance yesterday. I thought some of his slides some of his slides for the middle passes, considering the pressure he's under. The pressure he's under, the easiest thing to do is take conservative clip balls, clip them down to the wingers, fade it into people's chests. But no, he's gone down the middle between people, knowing that one mistake is going to be highlighted forever, and we won't see him for 6 months. Right? So he was prepared to play his game. When the pressure came on, we wanted to try to get territory. We wasn't so as successful, but I don't think that was just down to him. I think we went straight on passes out the back, too straight, not clipped, not faded. And we didn't retain the ball. And what happens with young players? They fade in the second half. They don't, we know that happens with all of our front 4 Highlanders, although Charles was just learning about. But they fade in the second half. So what happens? You don't win duels and the ball keeps coming back. If he wanted to win this game, although he won it, and he had more options, then we'd have had better ball retention players at top end of the pitch, and we'd have won the ball, we'd have just killed them. Because Brentford are quite low at the moment. That's the reason why they only made 2 changes, because they lost at home to Everton at the weekend. And he wanted to have a response. And that's why he went strong. And I was fearful for this game because I knew they'd go strong. I knew we'd have to go weak. But it turned out really well. Hence why I was really positive about the overall performance and result in context. So I thought Ramsdale did well. I thought his saves are excellent. We're playing Bournemouth for the weekend, which is his ex-team. It's an interesting one. Who would you pick? Right? Because that feeds into Lon's away. Right? So, and again, I'm still waiting to understand the cadence of what the manager's trying to do. because I thought he extracted a fantastic performance from Ramsdale yesterday. I don't think we win it without him. Will that lead to a couple of games on the spin, or do they already know what games they're going to be playing in? I'm just so open-minded on this. I just feel we are a better squad for having the two of them. I'm worried about the chitter-chatter around us because it's a distraction. But
yeah, that's for sure.
But also, people inside the club, they're not bothered by distractions. They just don't care. Just move on. One day you're big news, and next day it's someone else. They just move on, and we just get trapped in it, right? So, my mind's open here, Elliot. This keeper thing. I'm waiting to learn and see.
And just to be clear, because had I been on the instant reaction, which I wasn't, I had Ramsdale as my biggest stock rising. He's been on the bench. He comes in. He wins us the game. And Mikel says that, by the way. We had some big blocks in the box, and Aaron making a big save as well. And he was himself. He was having a go at the supporters. They were having a go at him. He looked like himself. But to me, when I read, and in the second half, they had a more aggressive approach. We struggled to progress the ball and travel together. We were too direct, and then it becomes a difficult game because there are a lot of duels. There's free kicks and long throws, and you have to defend every time and bring everybody back to try to get out and win territory from there. And when I look at Ramsdale, who completed just 50% of his 41 passes, completed 9 of 29 long kicks, went long those 16 times, I think I mentioned roughly in the second half. I cannot look at those quotes from Mikel and not relate them back to that dynamic. And so look, can I be clear? This is not me saying it wasn't a good performance, because I think it's a clearly, evidently brilliant performance. I'm trying to see what Mikel might see that leads to the decision we've taken with our keepers and how that might shape, the future of where we're going. That's what I'm trying to see. I'm trying to understand it, right? Because as a supporter, I said it right at the beginning of the season. I rate Ramsdale, and I think he'll win the job. I am not as convinced now, and I think that tendency, especially under pressure, might be the difference. And to your point, Clive, we had an all change back four. Not all change, 2 change. So that's not even half. That's half change back four. But you get my point. And the irony is, I think Tomiyasu and Kiwior were the best 2 in it. And if there's any really, really bright spot from this game, I think it's their performance. Because the irony is, going into the season, what were we apoplectic about? We needed another defender. Why didn't we get another defender? Well, now the irony is, Tomiyasu and Kiwior come in. They look brilliant. It's the other areas of the pitch. Both of our 8s are out, and both of our left wingers are out. So it's like, both of our 6s are out, and both of our left wingers are out. So it's like, you never know where your squad is going to look thin once the season kicks off. It doesn't look thin in defense right now. You know where it looks really thin? At 6 and at left wing. And that's not a position we would have expected to be in. I got to tell you about some companies here. So let me do that. And then we'll talk a little bit about Sago Jr. I don't think there's a lot to say, but we want to certainly praise him and talk a little bit about how the game wrapped up and where we go with this cup and what this cup means. And unfortunately, I think also we have to do a section on Kai Havertz because we are contractually obligated to do that. So let's do that. The first thing I want to do is tell you this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp isn't online therapy. It is therapy that happens to be online. You can go to betterhelp.com/vision and find out more about it. You'll get 10% off your first month. But the point about BetterHelp is very simply that therapy is important. And, like any way that you can get yourself to do it that makes it more convenient for you and more approachable for you is a positive. It's a positive thing, right? If you don't like getting in the car and going to the gym, but you have a little home gym at home, maybe you're more inclined to get the exercise you need, right? If you keep healthy food in the house, it's easier to make healthy choices. If therapy is right there, sitting at your desk, on your computer, it might give you that nudge to just go try it, talk through some of the things that are on your mind and get those off your mind. Because the thing that happens to me, right, is I'm an anxious person. I know you probably can't tell that, probably doesn't come through in the pod, but I'll just find myself feeling anxious, my breathing getting shallow. I'm like, what am I even worrying about? I don't even know what's on my mind. I need to start to talk through it. Maybe I'm worried that a podcast episode wasn't good, which, is probably directly related to something I said, frankly, like my Ramsdale point earlier. And then you start to talk about it and you realize what it is and you work through it and that you can breathe again. You get a little more relaxed. BetterHelp is a way to do that in a way that you can access more conveniently. You can get a therapist that fits your needs. There are specialists that may not be in your area. I just think it's a wonderful way to get access to something that we should all consider participating in. So get a break from your thoughts with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/vision today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/vision. Went a little deep on that one, but I was really feeling it because I have been feeling a little bit of anxiety lately. I think when Arsenal don't play well, I feel anxious. So I'm glad we played well yesterday. Now, I drink AG1. You should drink AG1, and you can do it by going to drinkag1.com. AG1 is 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, adaptogens, probiotics. It is just a powerhouse for gut health, for energy. It replaces all those gummy vitamins. So, I started using it for gut health. That was my reason for drinking AG1. You just put a scoop in water, you drink it down, plus you're getting water, which, that never hurts. I would just say that it's something you should give a try. It was designed by athletes with sports science in mind, so it's great for recovery, and it's whole body health. If you're taking those gummies that are on your shelf, they're mostly sugar. Like you got to get rid of that. You got to do something healthier. So consider doing something that covers all your bases nutritionally. I trust AG1 for that. You can give it a try. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/vision. That's drinkag1.com/vision. Check it out. Now, finally, last, and I promise you not least, is NordVPN. I was using Nord way before they ever said anything on this podcast. It's just the easiest, most powerful VPN. It's simple. You get an app on your computer. You get an app on your phone. You click. You tell it where you want to browse, and you're browsing there. So you want to watch the match of the day highlights? You can. You want to browse a different Netflix? You can. You're traveling, if you're an American where you can watch every single football match, it's amazing. But then you're out of America and you're like, wait, why can't I watch every football match? You VPN back to America, you can watch all your football matches. So it just makes it easy to watch what you want from where you want. Plus there's threat protection. Threat protection is great because, it can eliminate threats before they're on your computer, which is the perfect time to eliminate them, as opposed to after they're on your computer. You're going to be able to get a free trial, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee is what I'm trying to say. So let me give you the exact thing. You can give it a try. Great. If you like it. If you don't, they'll issue a refund. There you go. And you can pretend the entire situation never happened. So check out the link, nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision to get your subscription started. Okay. That's nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus an additional month for free. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Clive, is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. Yeah. I would agree. Indeed. That is enough of that. Clive, well, Paul, let me just ask you real quick. I apologize for shutting you out of the Ramsdale conversation. I don't want to go too long on this because I want to get to a couple of the performances and what they mean. And unfortunately, we're contractually obligated to do the Kai section, so we'll set that aside for a moment. Thoughts on my inane comments on Ramsdale and why they're stupid and terrible and shouldn't have been shared?
See, the thing is, I keep going to the other side of what I think is the facet of Ramsdale versus Raya, which is the distribution thing is very related to how good are you with the ball at your feet. Because if you only have one option, which is to distribute, then the other team knows to mark all the players outside the box. So for me, what I was looking for in this game, and the reason he wasn't a massive stock rising, even though he was really good, even though he made a great save, I think he was actually pissed with his defenders because they kept blocking all these shots that were coming through, and he could have made his fantastic world level saves and kind of proved a point. And like Kiwior and bloody Tomiyasu kept sticking a leg out and blocking and doing a fine job. So when you only got the chance to make the one eye-catching, turn it on the post save. What he really wanted to do in this game, if you ask me, was show that he could control the ball in the box. Like he had one moment early on where he flubbed the ball, and fully understand it because he hadn't been playing for a while. And like I think more important than distribution for Ramsdale is getting back to being really comfortable with the ball at his feet. And like that's just, for me, that's why Raya was brought in. He's a bit more foot at his feet, ninja, a bit more control. Now, will it play out that way? We'll see. But I think it's not really about distribution. Distribution is, do you have options as a keeper? Can you wait for the moment for your guy to be open? Because if you're not great with your feet, then the other team can cover all your out balls. You've got to be able to give them different looks, do different things, play out from the back. Yep. Distribution, like, okay, you got to be able to pass the ball, but you've got to be not just okay with your feet, you got to be great with your feet so that the other team can cover you. They've got to push up. They will push up. The man-to-man coverage on your out balls, they can't maintain it over time. It's all about the feet. As long as you can pass. I think they can both pass well enough. I don't think the difference is how good they can distribute. I think the difference is, and the reason Raya's here, and we'll see if it plays out, is he's much better with the ball at his feet, and that's why his distribution is better, in theory, at least theoretically, because they have to chase him, they have to run him down, because he doesn't have to pass to get out, he doesn't have to pass to hurt them.
Yeah. No, I think that's actually a really good point. And look, I want to be clear just as a final point on where I was going with this. I think it's very easy to just say, Ramsdale was great. I loved watching him. He's fun. I love him. He's great. Like, sure. I want to try to understand where we're going with this position and why we're doing it. And so, when Mikel says we went long too often in the second half, I want to look in and see where did he see that, and what's his feeling on that. Let's move on though. I think the interesting thing is Tim made a point on Twitter is sort of saying, like, why are we even asking so many questions about Ramsdale? Raya's our number one and Ramsdale's our other keeper, and they're both great, but that's the state of play. I'm sort of inclined to agree with him. I'm not saying people are going to like that necessarily, because Ramsdale's a very popular figure, as he should be. He's a big reason why we are where we are, the rise we've made, but that might be just where we are. Clive,
I'm not there and accepting that yet emotionally. I'm just not there.
Most people aren't.
It's not because I don't rate Raya, because I think he's really, really good, but I think Ramsdale's really, really good. There's a difference between them. I'm not sure Raya makes that save that Ramsdale made yesterday, but what Raya does very, very well is his preparation before the ball arrives is better. So he creates more space for his passing and how he receives it. He's a footballer, right? He separates and he goes to the first part of the box, giving himself time to make a next decision. His kicking ability is a little bit cute, a little bit soft, but Ramsdale is only at 5% behind him. Distance-wise, I think Ramsdale's bigger. And I don't think it's much between them. What teams are doing, Elliot, and this is something they did against Spurs, and they did it to Ramsdale last night, everyone is curving off our right side. They don't want us to go on our right side. That's where our super talent is. So they're making us go left. And they're forcing our two right-footed keepers to kick with their left foot. And guess what? Their numbers are dropping. And that's the same. Ramsdale had one shaky moment yesterday when he was blocked off on his right foot. And Raya had a few at the weekend. And this is something we've got to adjust to. And we will adjust to it. We may have to go deeper in our box to give more time to get onto your right side. We will adjust. We will adjust our pattern accordingly as teams are adjusting to the fact that our goalkeepers are major playmakers for us. I don't know where this is going, mate. I generally don't know where it's going. When your goalkeeper's getting 30, 40 touches, we may have to think about this position in a slightly different way. That's always been my position. They're footballers now. So let's open our minds up to the fact they could be treated like such.
Yeah. Look, one of the things too, by the way, we're not doing much event analysis of this game. I just don't think it matters. I think the most important and interesting thing about this game is like what we're doing now is looking at some of the people that got to play and seeing how those performances may be relevant to what's to come, right? Because I think there were some really interesting performances. I mean, maybe one of the most interesting, and I feel bad that we're almost an hour in and haven't touched on it, is Tomiyasu, who was probably man of the match. He was just fantastic. And, if you go back to when we first signed Tomiyasu, Clive, he was a star at right back. We were so taken by him. And then injuries wrecked that season and really have wrecked most of the rest of the time he's been at the club. But when fit, really fit and getting a run, he's been excellent for us. Everywhere we've called on him. He had that lockdown performance was it at Anfield or was it at home against?
At the Emirates against Liverpool.
At the Emirates, yeah, against Salah, when he was, sort of deployed in a special fashion to lock him down. I thought that was amazing. Look, he had the bad moment against City last season, and I'm sure there are people that will struggle to get that out of their mind, but he's a player who I think has a lot of interesting qualities. He plays center back for his country. He's played fullback off both sides for us. Having a defender of his stature and his skill set who can play center back and both fullback positions in the way we need it done, I think that's really, really important. And I was really happy to see the performance he put forward for us, because he's a player we're going to rely on. Like I said earlier, we thought the defensive area was where we were going to be short this season, but we don't look short the way Tomiyasu and Kiwior also played last night.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And, you know, I look at the preseason tweets and they're all saying, we need another defender. Tomiyasu can't be trusted. Zinchenko can't be trusted. He's injured already. I did feel Tomiyasu was unlucky with injuries. I said it before. He did great. He was overplayed, if we're honest. He played every minute when he first got here. He literally arrived, no preseason. We just played him. Game 1, there you go. Well, it's actually game 4, but you know what I mean, after the international break. Then we played him until he broke. Then we brought him back too soon.
Yep.
Right? And we did. We brought him back too soon, and he broke down again, same area. Then he had the unfortunate slip against Sporting Lisbon, which was just a slip on the pitch, and that done his knee. That doesn't mean he's injury prone. I mean, he's just unlucky. Right? And there's lots of videos of him and lots of footage of him this summer doing extra work to come back fit. And boy, does he look fit. Does he look engaged? That's someone literally fighting for his career. You know, he's fighting for his next contract. And I thought he was great covering round. I thought he was great on distribution. He's got long-footed passes on both feet. He can slide it. He can press high. He can move him around. Valuable asset to me. I would keep him. I just like him. You know, I just like him. Kiwior now. Again, do you mind if I go on to him, Elliot, quickly?
Yes, please do. Because that, by the way, how about that recovery block that he made? Holy cow!
I mean, again, if you watched him before he came here, he was the senior defender for a team in the top league in Italy, and he came into Arsenal not knowing the language, and he looked sort of deferent and quiet. You can almost judge him on the length of his passes, mate. When he starts pinging it, you know he's feeling comfortable, and he's starting to ping it, and he's starting to take real responsibility, and the manager's just moved him. There you go, left back, do well there. Okay, you're now right centre back. That means he's gaining trust of the manager, and he's gaining trust of all of us, right? So major player, 22, 23 tops. This is serious stuff. So the Saliba thing now, if it happens this year, we wouldn't fall down, would we? We'd be okay.
No.
You know, so we've learned that from last night.
It would hurt, but not like it did last season.
Not like it did last season. So we've learned something. That's why I really enjoyed last night's game. We've learned something. We've found something out from two players that are just right there at close to the level. Although I will say quickly, Gabriel, when you watch him play like he plays, how engaged he is, every game is his last. I sound silly listening back to myself trying to explain why he wasn't playing at the start of the season, because it looks stupid now. To me, it looks really, really stupid, which I think there's a story to be told there, which we haven't heard yet.
We'll see when Party's back. I still think I don't want to, we won't go through this now. I still think when we played with Party and Rice and Odegaard and Havertz, I see the vision there and I see what it was providing for us, but Zinchenko wasn't available at that time, and I think that may have driven some of that decision too. I don't care what you think of Zinchenko. He is one of the most important players we have in terms of progression and midfield progression and taking a risk with progressive passes to get it into those hurtful zones. He dominates those stats for us. So I don't know. We'll see. When Party's back, it'll be interesting to see how we mix and match. Okay. It's come to the point of the pod where we have to do it. By the way, if you're wondering why we haven't talked about Sago Jr., like Charles Sago Jr. played, an academy player, really happy for him, really big moment for him. I'll admit I know very little about him. You know, we know what Mikel has told us and some of the things I've seen on YouTube comps and stuff like that. I think the best thing you can say is we're happy for him. We hope he goes on to have a big Arsenal career. I don't think anyone's going to say, Clive, like off the back of that we're going to be seeing a lot of him, but a great moment for him. And Mikel said he's been great in training. He's been the most consistent at the U23 level.
Well, you just said it, right? He had a fantastic game against Manchester United last week. I think he had a hat-trick of assists. And I think they won the game 4-2, and he's done well. And I love the fact that he's been rewarded for performing well and training well with the first team. That's such a boost to the other players that are also that are getting closer to the group. And for those, I've been an academy parent for 3-4 years, and for his family that have been carrying him around London since he was 8-9 years of age, hoping to get that moment. Right, to get that moment, to make your first team debut, I can only applaud him, because I thought he held down his side really, really well. Didn't cause us any embarrassment or anything like that. it's a new level for him, and he'll learn a lot from this. And congratulations to him.
I think the hardest thing for academy kids when they come into a first team situation is to express themselves. You saw this with Nelson, right? At times even, I'll play it safe. I'll play the 3-yard pass. I won't try to skin somebody. I won't turn it over. I won't have the spotlight on me. I want to fit in. And he did a bit of that, but I think we saw him express himself a little bit. Just Clive said it perfectly, so we'll leave it there. Paul, the Kai Havertz performance, it's interesting, right? He had some crucial defensive headers. He had some really important interventions defensively to win the ball when we were on the back foot. He headed out. He won some duels defensively when they were playing him free kicks and long throws. And all of those things are important. And I can't help but feel if Granit Xhaka put in the Kai Havertz performance we got yesterday, that people would be saying Xhaka, captain, leader, legend. The grafting, steely performance that we expect from Xhaka to not knit it all together. But it is fair to say that's not what we dipped into the market and spent $65 million to do. We spent $65 million to get a guy that we think could do some of that, but then add that bit of spark, that bit of magic in the final third that took us up even a level. And so I think it is fair to say that the guy just keeps giving us that nice 6 or 7 out of 10 where he does the grafting and he does the work that you need in a team performance. But that bit of magic, that bit of dynamism, that bit of explosive offensive capability that we presumed was the reason for making a big splash, that hasn't shown yet. And I think some patience of some people is wearing thin. I wouldn't say it's wearing thin for me, but I'm coming around to the idea that it isn't what we fully need yet. You know what I mean? Like I'm getting a little. Yeah. My whiskers are twitching just a little bit on this working the way we need it to work.
Yeah, I'm a bit like that too. The other thing I'd add to what he was doing, kind of defensively, is one of the things I didn't think he would do that Xhaka used to do for us was he'd drop into the back line, or he'd cover, he'd run the length of the pitch and fill in a spot in that back line. And Havertz did that a couple of times last night. I've been really impressed with that part of his game. Not just that he tackles, that he gets in defensive headers, that he fills in a spot. He'll run the length of the pitch because he senses the danger defensively. He's switched on for that. He'll fill in a slot at centre back because somebody's still up the pitch as we're travelling back. He did that a couple of times, and I'm like, oh, he's actually really got that down. The most frustrating part for me at the moment with Kai Havertz, given that I've kind of accepted he's lacking a little confidence in the box and he's either snatching at a shot or taking too long to get it off or hitting a shot that he it's almost like he can hear them all shouting shoot, so he does when he knows he should actually recycle to somebody else in a better position because it's just not quite on. Like there's quite a lot of that going on. Part of the problem is he's going to get himself into more of those situations than Xhaka ever would because of his movement into the box, because of his pace speed. He'll get there before the other guy. He's good at forcing turnovers that allows us to counterattack, and that's why I think it was a bit of a miss against Spurs that we didn't have him there. That was a big part of our game plan. He's probably the best outside of Jesus, who came on in this game again and absolutely fizzle cracked and popped when he came on. Like, holy shit, the electricity takes off when Jesus is there. Outside of Jesus, I think Havertz is, maybe Odegaard, Havertz, those are the next two in terms of their pressing, forcing turnovers. But the most frustrating thing, and we saw it even in this game, is he has something I call the tweener pass, where he passes it kind of between two players and almost to nobody. He has it like there was the goal we gave away against United, which was probably the worst version of that. It's like mostly into an area, mostly at a guy, but not quite. He had a couple in this game, and I'm like, he had time, he had a little space. And it's kind of a nothing pass to soar to somebody, not to somebody. It's so lackadaisical, but it's often in kind of areas that allow them to transition. And that to me is the thing I've been most surprised about. Kind of, he's a 2-3 loose passes a game, it feels, to a spot rather than a player.
Yeah, sometimes the delta between expectation and reality always defines our appraisal of something. If we thought we had bought a grafting, steely, box-to-box midfielder who could give us some presence and physicality and pressing, I think people would be saying, he's doing, I think, what we bought him for. The problem is I think you could buy that more easily at a lower price in different places. I think the expectation of we're getting an attacking whirlwind is what's leaving people feeling a little cold from some of these performances. Clive and I are going to go deep on that topic tomorrow. So I hope you will join us for that, because we have, that is one of our, I'll just tease it for the Patreon pod we're doing tomorrow. That will be one of our 3 big things that we discuss tomorrow. We got a lot of questions for it. But Clive, what I'd rather do with the last minute we have here is the League Cup. We're going to West Ham. It's the Declan Rice derby away. City are out. I have to admit, I don't rate this cup and I don't care about it. And when I say that, I cannot tell you how angry it makes people. Of all the dumb shit I say in this pod, and I say so much dumb shit, how do people keep up with it enough to know what to get mad at me about? That's the thing I think makes people the most mad. What's the significance of this cup for you? How significant is it for us? Because I guess my contention essentially is, if we fall short of our goals in other competitions, if we somehow don't get out of the group stage of the Champions League, or we finish, God forbid, 5th in the Premier League, winning the League Cup ain't going to please me. I wouldn't trade places with United last season, that's for sure. But winning a trophy would be brilliant. So how do we rate it? Where's it stand?
Yeah, winning a trophy is nice, but not this trophy. I want to win some of the other ones.
Oh, I love you. I knew I loved you.
That's just the way. That's the way I look at it. Let me tell you something now. The Man City at home game in a week or so's time is going to be like an FA Cup final for many people. That is the moment. And we just got to get this in our heads, right? The game has changed. Financial rewards have changed. Sporting position of having been in top competitions, and it's just changed, right? So, yeah, it's nice to win the League Cup, but trust me, by the time the hangover goes, it's forgotten, right? It doesn't save anyone's job, right? So yeah, that's how I feel about it. That's it. But again, like anybody else watching that game, once Arsenal start playing, you want them to do well. But we did well yesterday without the cost of anything else. We didn't lose anybody injury-wise, and I think we found people. So the game worked for us, And that's my position on it. We got a big, we got one of 3 away games. I think we got, obviously we got Bournemouth for the weekend. We've got Lons away on Wednesday before we settle back at home versus City. So we're in away game mode, and we found some bodies to help us in those away games. So we're going to need every single one of them, because we need to have fresh bodies for the pitch for Man City. So hugely positive day for me from a squad perspective.
Yeah, totally agree. But I think one of the things this competition gives you is a chance to get players who are on the fringes into a game and be in a position where if you have to call on them in a maybe more significant game, they can play. Where I think the League Cup really, for me, I kind of lost it with this competition, was it 2 seasons ago. We're battling for top 4. We thought we could get there. We had the 2-legged semifinal against Liverpool. Was that 2 seasons ago? And Partey gets a red card, I want to say, and one of them, Xhaka, gets injured. I think we go to Burnley the next game, playing like a makeshift midfield, and we drop points. And it moves the Spurs the away derby from January to April. And then in April, we have the injury crisis. So we play Spurs with nobody. We lose that game. We lose to Newcastle, and we miss out on top 4. And I just felt so strongly that 2-legged semifinal in the League Cup that season really wrecked our chances. So if we have a chance...
I don't know how people can get wound up, like I do, about a competition in which for the first few rounds, it's 2 teams, B team, playing each other. And only when in the semifinals do people actually send out their A teams.
Yeah, that's the other thing. If the clubs are telling you they don't care, the fans are probably going to follow suit. Look, I look at it this way. This is the best way I can say it. Winning it would feel great. It's just that winning it won't fix how we'll feel if other things go bad. And I wouldn't want to gamble anything. If we can win this without gambling the rest of our season, that'd be brilliant. So that's the needle you got to thread, right? Can you get this trophy without doing something like playing Saka in 2 legs of a semifinal in January and then losing him for a critical January fixture? That's the calculus. It's a little bit of a tough one. Well, look, we'll leave it there. It was a fun night. It's great to move on. We get the Declan Rice derby away in the next round. We've got Champions League in midweek next week. We got Bournemouth this weekend, and then it's City. So I agree with Clive. That's going to feel like the whole season right there. We'll wait for some injury news updates. We'll probably cover that a little bit on the Patreon pod tomorrow. But if you want to hear the 3 big things at the club right now as sourced by you, what you guys have told us you want to hear, we'll be doing that tomorrow. Little bit of a hectic week this week, a lot of scheduling challenges, and then we had some recording challenges on Monday. So we're trying to get back to normal service, and I think we'll be there very soon. So thanks for bearing with us. Love you so much for being here. Paul's on Twitter, Pause My Pants. Thanks, Pause.
Woohoo!
Clive's on Twitter, Clive PFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
I'll be having you tomorrow, son.
No, mate.
My name is no, I will
You
not.
best be ready.
No, I will not. Yeah, I will. My name's Elliot Smith, Blackman Twitter. We love you. We'll talk to you after Arsenal 10, Bournemouth. No.